Hello.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
voice is clear. PPT is
Yes.
clear.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay, fine. So I can take it forward. You must be aware the vehicle handling is a, if you look at it, it is a really very simple job. And it is always said that if roadside mechanics can do anything for all those automotives, including two-wheelers, three-wheeler, four-wheeler, which we are day in, day out come into picture, or even if you look at the buses and trucks, which have been maintained by these people at the roadside mechanics, the things are getting changed in past decade. The controls which have been shifted towards electronic controls has gone to a very high level, and that kind of a role of roadside mechanics has literally come down, and people has to have the proper trained kind of a situations, because the complications in the vehicle or construction level wise, the various components which get added for controlling of emissions, controlling of the vehicles, controlling of engine, transmission, all those things has changed drastically, and it has been considered as a very specialized matter for those areas of the new vehicles which have been launched in last 10 years. Similarly, now the entire scenarios are changing towards the electrical mobility, and there is a paradigm shift which is happening for electrical mobility, probably in future, which will come up as a hybrid mobility. In future, it may come up as a fuel cell mobility. So all those trends which are supportive for electric vehicles is going to come up. And we are here to learn about what are the requirements, as industry has necessarily, I would say ki they have inculcate those features, they have got trained from the expertise, and they have taken it up to the next level. So probably this will be the one of the rare opportunity to understand what is being done. Now, first and foremost thing, if you are handling these vehicles, you need to have a basic knowledge. And this basic knowledge of those vehicles need to come up in a right format. Yes, I do agree with all of you that you have a lot of literature which has been written down, many professors which has been already available from abroad. People try to make it available to the down level and the as per the requirements of these different people. So understanding wise, yes, I do agree with you, but scenarios are quite different in the industry when they talk about all those considerations. So first and foremost thing, anybody can attend the vehicle like the old garage which is used to run. Is it possible for all of us to act on those vehicles which are coming up with the new and latest technology? Answer is absolutely no. If you look at it, how to handle, the first and foremost thing which comes to my mind for all those, where are the trainings available, who is going to train it, even though training is given, what are the precautions which we have to look forward. So taking into that clue, and that subject which was given to me was also in that nature, so I thought of in different perspective and try to put it forward to all of you. So first and foremost thing is a personal protective equipment, as these protection equipments are meant for the systems which we have to deal with. And since electrical vehicles are coming up, probably we have seen those small bikes which are running on the road. We have seen some of the three wheelers in the northern belt of the India. They are running in thousands of numbers, which has reached to something like 1 million plus vehicles in past 6 to 7 years. And still that population in Maharashtra is not there, but however, it is going to come up in Maharashtra as well. So why not to look and learn for all those possibilities how to deal with? Of course, there are two things. One is what sort of voltage system they are using, what type of batteries they are using, the complexity of those vehicles construction wise, they have made it very simple. So as a first beginner part, it has gone to a very low level of the risk, and people have taken up those things and they have worked forward. But if you are dealing with the high voltage systems, we are going to see that in next part of it, how to deal it, and that is the most important question which we have to answer first. And that's how I taken up the first topic as personal protection equipments. And under the protection, there are certain areas which we have to demark when we are working on such type of vehicles. So as like roadside, we cannot do it. The first and foremost thing is a exclusive zone has to be marked for those vehicles, wherein lot of protection equipments which has to be used. So we will be able to see those equipments. There are helmets, goggles, many equipments covering the skins. There are jackets which have been made available. Then there has to be a different gas extinguishers which we have to use it or keep it nearby, wherein accessibility for any accidental case has to be there. When you are connecting with, the insulating mats are required. Though there are certain rods which have been made as a protective rods by which you can disconnect the couple of connections and bracketries can be moved out. So there has to be first aid kit, there has to be proper trolleys, tools, various electrical measuring equipments which has to be there. Yes, of course, this is not new per se. Those who are working on the power electronics or those who are working in the MSc kind of a situations wherein electricians are handling the high voltage systems, they are well aware about it. But by and large, when the technology which is coming to our doorstep and everybody has to get acquainted with, we have to have the review about it. And that's the reason I'm just taking it up. So next slide wise, I'm trying to show you different PPEs. There are some standards which have been defined for it. And those standards, some of the things I will not read it out from that, but I say some importance for that. So helmet is there along with the shield, which is really required over here. Because if anything goes as a spark, it may try to burn out your skin as well or face as well. So it has to be particularly protected. I will just give you some important aspects over here. Then gloves, a certified electrical systems gloves which works for 1000-volt systems, and those has to be really to be protected well for your person who is working on the vehicles. Without gloves, without personal equipments, nobody is allowed it to work, and it has been meticulously followed. There are suits which have been made available which should comply with the covering with a flame resistance part. In case any electrical fire happens, the person who is working on the vehicles need to be protected completely. So without that, if anybody is working, it is a high level of risk, and probably as the numbers goes up, we may have to be more careful with all those mechanics or the engineers, those who are working. They have to have essentially all those equipments. One thing which I noticed, the in abroad, most of the advanced countries, they follow this discipline. However, in India, I need not to say about it, but here the discipline has to inculcate right from the beginning, and from the school level, children who are really need to get inculcate with those kind of a disciplinary requirements, so that there is a no second thought which come to our mind, why should I deviate and how can I bypass the systems. That things should be fully considered as a person in future when he is becoming a responsible person who is dealing with such type of activities. So there is a requirement of 12 months by which he has to discard it again, buy it a new one. That is again a different culture in India. I need not to talk about it much, but this type of things which are really concern for this, as if any properties goes out, probably you are aware about it. The racing drivers has to replace the suits every year. Similar way here also the person who is working on it, in case of any wear and tear happens in the threads or protection considered areas, probably that shock can go to your body level. This is the basic reason which mindset has to get prepared for all these people, and we should definitely, as a mediator for the society, we have to pass on such messages to students so that they are fully aware and they will also think in the right directions. These are the fire extinguishers. Generally for all type of electrical hazards, CO2 is well known, but in case of the CO2 areas which are applicable to the wires and the other areas where the electrical burning starts, you can take care of CO2. But at the same time, if body level paint starts burning out, you have to have DCP type of fire extinguishers along with you. Then mat protection throughout the working when you are on the ground. This helps to protect the grounding of the vehicle. So leakage current cannot pass through your body and you are protected by that way. So these important messages need to be there in industry. It is meticulously followed in all the control panels. They will definitely put the protection part of the bars. Then they will put these mats in front of those control panels. Similar things I would like to see and happily observe that if colleges are also following this type of requirements, at least electrical teams are well aware about the situations. They should make an insistence for this and also train to the students for such matters. There are certain tools which generally in other vehicle level mechanics they use it, or the engineers they use it. These are fully protected uh, equipments which has to be made available as per the given IEC standards. Similar standards in India are also available, but 1000-volt condition really need to meet it, because otherwise you will face a serious consequences and body becomes the grounding earth connections for your electrical discharge which happens through your body. So one has to be very careful. Similarly, the first aid kit, whenever the people are working, it has to be mandatory for all of them and it has to be made available along with your working areas. So multimeters and other things are well known to you. These fuses with the specifications of Cat 3 level 1000-volt or Cat 4 level 600 volts. Then test leads and probes, meters which are required. The meters and fuses must be checked and verified at certain point of intervals. And by that way, the SOPs has to be made so that in industry they follow the one guideline. Even if the operator is new, he will read out the SOP, which is very easy to read it out by himself in the language which he normally uses. Mother tongue is generally followed for that matter, and they kept these SOPs readily available. So even though new person comes in the job, he should be fully aware and has to read out, go undergo the training part of it, and then only he is allowed it to work on such matters. So even for a small level of the work for this type of mechanics or to the engineers, those who are working in the systems, they need to follow these practices very well. Working safety in HV systems. HV is high voltage systems, and you must be aware what it is called as a high voltage system. Anybody can tell me what is the voltage which is considered for it? Generally, 24 volt or 48 volt is considered as a low voltage systems. And anything above 72 volt systems in DC, there it has been treated as a high voltage systems. So vehicle wise, if you see, those vehicles are available in market like Toyota Camry, which is 244 volt systems. These people have made such a high voltage systems depend on your capacity of motor, capacity of battery, which you have to use it, and then the performance efficiency as per the gasoline vehicle which needs to meet. So there has to be a proper understanding what we are dealing with. And 72 volts, if without a protection, if some persons touch to the systems or any leakage happened through the wiring harnesses which has been laid down on the body side, probably there is a lot of risk one has to face with. And with that type of risk and coverage insulations which have been defined on all such electrical cables which are connected from battery to the motor end or probably the controlling ends. So all those areas which has to be proper channelized, protected, then it is to be placed in the case environment conditions wherein no water or environmental effect which will happen to those cables. And all such matters we have to really look at the risk which are very very high level for such matters. So hazard while working with HV systems has to be well known. People should be fully aware. Classification of electrical personnel according to EN systems. There are standards which try to give you a couple of Indian standards as well. There is a simulation which is available there in one of the paper. Then operations of electrical installations, installation cables and how to install it, from where to route it, which are the areas where is a likely chances of getting cut on all such matters of those cables or laying down those cables. So we have to be very careful here. And as a practical aspect of it, the proper layouts, proper drawings, proper packaging, and proper insulation has to be prepared for such matters. So getting ready is very, very important for that matter. We will go through these slides also. There are 5 safety rules which has to be followed in totality. There is no compromise on such rules. And establishing and de-energizing states. So how to de-energize the any conditions of the vehicle which are in running or maybe disconnected, how it is to be de-energized is to be known. Restoring of HV systems has to be known, and how to react in case of electrical accident. So I'm going to cover this aspect mainly in our today's discussion. Looking forward, uh, unintended acceleration and disacceleration. So when we are working on safety systems, the common risk which we have to deal with is personalized distractions. Sometimes mobile phone comes, somebody needs to go for smoking or loo or any other kind of a personal needs. So people don't take into action that I have completed safety action related to my work, and they have get into the other areas. Or sometimes the noise which is creating a lot of problems for a person not to concentrate on. Or hot surfaces, sometimes the temperatures are quite high in those rotating parts or those moving parts, which has already gone to such a high level of temperature. So they can't touch to that areas. Rotating and moving parts is also a mechanical properties which one has to look after. Then production tolerances and metal qualities, so material qualities. So wherever this type of inherent things which happens, probably we have to, as a balanced person, we have to take a proper understanding and then find out where the risks are involved, and accordingly we need to work upon. So sometimes knowingly or unknowingly some improper assemblies happen. Some screws has not been tightened properly to the required torque, and these have been just tightened with the spanner without understanding. Sometimes over tightening happens, sometimes loose tightening happens, and this part starts either rattling or starts making the loose contacts, and this creates a lot of heat generation as well. So insulation start getting melt, and finally we come into the scenario of burning of those cables or getting the motor catch with the fire or any kind of a severity which happens about it. So servicing processes also we need to look into detail part of it. Improper design or specification is another criteria. As a common man, we may not be able to do that, but those who are involved in designing features, they need to test the abnormality of all conditions. Like simple example, I would like to quote it here. When we develop the vehicles, probably we need to go to the coastal level for testing those vehicles at coastal level atmospheric condition. Similarly, we used to go to the various high altitude levels like Uti area or even Leh Ladakh area, where the oxygen level is different. And in that condition, how that engine need to behave, whether it is trying to get started, whether it is going to get effect on the emissions, what sort of the performance throttle opening happens for all those vehicles is also being looked at it. So similar type of improper designing by which we have do not validated all the parameters like this, maybe a lack of understanding, lack of experience, lack of knowledge, which will create for those. And especially this type of threat is very well happening in case of the startups or new people, those who are entering into the field. With a lot of energy, they try to see that, yes, I have designed, it is working, but whether it is working fine is the $1 million question which they never ask. So here I would like to go with a proper uh, importance to these points and these specifications, temperature, environmental conditions, or maybe altitude conditions, or maybe the worst case criteria conditions, which has to be put in. Based on that, only the products may run. I will give you a small example to it. Now you are well aware in Pune, our temperature in peak summer is normally between 42 to 43 level or 44 level sometimes. With that conditions, we becomes very, very uneasy. But just imagine the case where people from Dhule area or maybe from the northern part of the India, when their temperature goes to the level of something like 48, Nagpur is one of them. So 48 plus, or even you go extremely towards the Jaisalmer areas, wherein temperatures cross to 50 degrees. What it will happen to the systems? Definitely, it is not going to perform the way it perform in Pune or the way it perform in kind of a high altitude locations like Lonavala or Kopoli or maybe somewhere in Uti or Coimbatore or Kodaikanal. All those areas are quite different in that perspective. So, looking forward for such activities where the extremities are going there, we need to factorize and validate our products for such matters. So, improper designing means that doesn't reflect to complete design part of it. Probably sketching, attractions, and looking forward the novelties, everything may be fine. But if it is not tested completely, you had seen those examples of mobiles with a battery of lithium ion has exploded in couple of models. It is very specifically done in certain models, not in generic case, but these models are considered as a failure. Why it has been happened? So we have to have question to our mind, and based on that, we have to really understand what are the risks which have been we are dealing with. This is how the thought processes of a person is going to make a change for the understanding whether the systems have been considered as a foolproof part of it or not. Similarly, inadequate procedures, inadequate instructions or trainings, improper or lack of maintenance, misuse. Misuse is another term wherein people, I can take the example of it. Generally, load carrier vehicles of small nature of 350 kg or 500 kg or 1 ton kg capacity of those goods carriers, you might have seen that they are overloaded with 2 ton of load. Is this vehicle designed for that? Not the way. The vehicles are meant for 6 passengers, and we used to get these pictures of 22 people sitting in Nagar area. How it is possible? So you are trying to deal with the people, more and more people accommodating and trying to make a money, but that driver fellow who is illiterate fellow, who is not understanding, and more important is all those 22 or 45 people, those who accept to sit in that kind of a vehicle, even six-seaters vehicles, they don't understand this vehicle is not designed for that safety aspect. So driver may like to misuse it, but how we encourage them as a thought process at our level, with our wisdom, with our understanding, we have to really look into that aspect. And when product is designed, what sort of misuse is to be allowed it, what cannot work under the circumstances should be well defined. And that's how the design foolproofness is very, very important over here. To leak and environmental concerns, yes, current leakage, the environmental concerns which are there, we have to look into aspects. And as I like told you, the different climatic conditions, we have to test the vehicle. And some of the materials are prohibited materials. Today, can you ask me or can you reply to me whether lithium ion is safe? Answer is no. Still, knowingly, we are taking high level of risk by using the lithium ion. And still, we are saying that e-mobility is completely dependent on materials like lithium. So lithium has its own plus point. Or even in future, when we talked about it, the hydrogen is going to substitute for your gasoline fuel. Yes, it will be substitute, but what sort of restrictions which we have to deal with, what sort of implications which we have to deal with, we have to have a complete thought process when we take such type of decisions and make your vehicles very strong to anticipate those kind of a failures which can handle in all circumstances and look for such type of decisions how we can incorporate those with a safety, with a proper features, with a warning systems, with all those precautions. One is fully aware what he is dealing with. So even if we are trying to use some prohibited materials, we have to have the proper level of signals. A simple case I would like to quote it here. In USA particularly, you might have visited, you might have heard about it. Even on the cafe coffee day, you always it is mentioned that your coffee cup is very hot. Is it that people are not aware? Yes, they are well aware, but when they are drinking coffee, it is always mentioned on that you are dealing with the hot substance, which you have to be very protective about it. So a caution warning which has been given there is mainly for such type of activities, and that kind of ambience in India need to be brought. That is how I'm trying to put it forward. So all you are a thinker in that perspective, I would expect you also should pass on similar message, and that is what our importance is there. I will move forward quickly. I have little limitations on the time, and I'm really hard pressed for the time, but I will try to give you good justice when we are discussing on this. The safety in HVAC systems with hazard while working with the HV systems, which are the hazards which we have to deal with. The risk directly associated with HEV systems is basically exposure to high voltage. As I told you, above 72 volt, we are dealing with HV batteries deliver the voltages up to 600 volts. And you must have seen for the safety factor, it has been protected to 1000 volt systems. So all those tools which have been made has been at least factor of safety of 1.8, 1.9 of that kind of nature. So broken connections, open or shortcuts, or the wire cuts, improper assembly, chopped off wires, unknown systems definitions, the presence of the capacitors and inadvertent charging or lack of the capacitors to discharge, all those things are unknown to us. How it behaves, we are not given to understand. Realize of hazardous vapors and gases which are formed out of the HV batteries. Electrical arcing during the connections and disconnections is also one of the feature which we have to notice. Uh, at least in your lifetime, maybe at least couple of times in particularly monsoon, you have seen that MSCB wires which are hanging around, they are moving in up and down directions or sideways directions, and they create sparking on the poles. How many of you have taken care that at least call MSCB local stations to take care of that? Nobody has turned out because the electrical connections, which is not your job, but in a safety manners, in a precautionary manners, at least we need to inform them. And finally, it turns out that short circuit happens, the wires fall down, the live currents pass on the vehicles, live current pass on the people, those who are in and around. So those things happens at the end of the day. So if we take a proper precautions of such connections which are improper or maybe because of the arcing which has started burning on that side, immediately need to be protected. Improper towing or service hookups is also one of the criteria. How to hook it up your electrical vehicles has to be instructions properly given. Improper or lack of personal protection equipments to use when people are working on it, including driver. Now, there used to be some engineers who used to go and look into the carburetor area. They try to do something. They try to open up some cables, try to do at least something to get it started. But such type of vehicles, if you start touching on those without having the proper understanding, probably you are carrying highest risk in this life, and that is to be avoided in totality. So in the inadequate controlling systems, then improper fuse installations, missing and damage and inaccurate labels is also to be properly taken care. Improper measurements and inaccurate test equipments, improper tools, and inadvertent activations of the high voltage. So suddenly high voltage starts, the spike goes up, and then the entire cable becomes hot. So those type of situations, if it is happening in your vehicle, which need to be monitored when the proper testing has to happen. The release of hazardous vapors and gas from the HV batteries. All these batteries, including your lithium-ion batteries, lead acid batteries, or any type of new batteries which are coming up, they emit some gases and vapors. So how it is being taken care, disposing, whether it is happening properly, all those acidic conditions or all those gaseous conditions, which may create some hazardous fumes, which need to be properly understood and they need to be properly evaluated. That is how these slides makes energy importance over here. Then who are qualified to work with these HV systems according to EN50110. A nominated person in control of work activity has to be properly trained. Nominated persons with ultimate responsibility of work activity. Some of these duties can be discharged to the others as required. So sometimes if the person is not there, then who is supposed to be a next person to work on that? Then nominated person in control of electrical installations. So who is responsible for it? How he look after the installation part of it? A person who ultimately responsible for operations of electrical installations. Some of these duties can be delegated to others as required. So you have to have adequately trained people available with you. And the kind of skills which are electrically required is person with relevant education, knowledge, experience, which enables him to work and analyze the risk and avoid all hazards which are and electrical generation which can happen from that perspective. So there is a definite need. A trained person has to work upon it. No gray person can work on such matters. And even if one person is working, there has to be a second person who can give him small relief by acting on some of the cases. And the alternative people, those who work on systems, will be able to jointly manage these activities. So live working is the case. All working in which worker deliberately makes connects with the live parts or reach into the live working zones with the either parts of his or her body with the tools, equipments and devices being handled. So he has to be a properly uh, protective equipments has to be with him. The proper tools has to be given to him. Working in the vicinity of the live parts. So even if you are working nearby of the live parts, the low voltage systems live work is carried out by those workers when connecting with the bars live parts at high voltage systems. The live working is carried out by those workers when entering into the live working zone. So from high voltage or low voltage to high voltage, when they are migrating from one zone to another, so they have to be properly trained about it. And regardless whether the contact is made with the bare or live parts or not, he has to be prepared with the entire protective equipment, safety kits, which he has to wear with. So all work activity in which the worker with the part of his body or with the tools or with any other objects enters into the vicinity zone without encroaching into the live working zone is to be considered as a risky part of it. And dead working, even though the switch has been switched off, the connections has been not made live or it is not even vicinity of the live parts. So one has to be make sure that it is a dead working zone so that he can disconnect, he can operate, he can check the batteries, he can check the connections. A proper time has to be given for that, and with that only he has to work on the such systems. Now, getting ready, how he can be prepared by himself. Check working tools for defects, replace the defective tools if it is there. Check the proactive clothing for the defects and safety gloves, protective equipments fully covering the skin, protective helmets with face protection, wear protective clothing, remove all your jewelry. This is the simple message which gives you a complete thought about it. Probably all metal rings on your hands, the watch on your body, or any jewelries who are normally having a habit of using the jewelries. So these people has to be completely away from these metals. At least during the working, one should be protective for all such things. Generally, in automotive lines, when workers are around the vehicle car assembly plant, they have been instructed to even your belt for your pant is normally protected with the cloth so that no scratches happens on the body painted parts. Similarly, the wrist watches, they are not allowing, the rings, they are not allowing. So these kind of electrical systems respective protections has to be taken care. And the simple message is never work alone. Something goes wrong, probably you have been thrown out, you are not able to call, you are not able to move, you are not able to shout. In such condition, at least second person who will notice you and make a alarming signal to the others is essentially required over here. The five safety rules. disconnect HV systems, secure HV systems against reconnecting, then verify that installation is dead. Without that, you will not open the systems. Carry out grounding and short circuiting. So one has to be very sure that proper grounding has been taken care. Provide the protection against the adjacent live parts. So even if the charging systems are available, or even if the things which are you are working on it, battery is connected and you are starting to check with the motor voltage currents and all those things, you have to be very, very careful so that the preparation of the work can be taken into a mind. Then establishing the de-energizing states when the something has happened and you need to rectify that. So turn ignition off, key to off, remove the key and put the key tab into the vehicle range, out of the vehicle range. Even there are remote systems which allow the signals to pass through the remote sensors. That should be taken care. If vehicle has a keyless start function, then disable it properly. Disconnect the vehicle with 12-volt battery. There is a 12-volt battery for the lighting controls is again to be disconnected. So no supplies from battery level to vehicle level goes by any chance. Remove the service plugs and turn the safety switches off. Keep the service disconnected in safe place so that nobody can connect it to the vehicle while work is done on the HVV systems. Wait about 10 minutes. This is a very, very important message, mainly for those people who are working on this type of HV systems, till the capacitors and vehicles are completely discharged. So even if you take out the connections, you need to allow that cooling time. The discharge has to happen, and leak of current by normally grounding systems, which happens, allow that 10 minutes time so that the complete discharge happens. I will give you a small illustration over here. We are organizing an ARI, so many crash vehicles, and in crash vehicles, we also deal with EV related crash vehicles. So when the crash took place, in general, there is a proper guideline given to all our people those who work in this area, not to touch for 15 minutes to nearby vehicle. Of course, people can keep a distance of safe 2 meters distance from the vehicle. They can observe what other things has gone, or which are the areas which have been damaged completely, which are the areas which have been protected completely. But they need to allow that 15 minutes time or 20 minutes time in case of electrical vehicles, or even the ordinary gasoline vehicles also, they need to spend 10 minutes time. So we made such type of rules over there, and this is what important for all of us to follow with, so that the people's risk is mitigated properly. Through these measurements, make sure that the systems says de-energize, and that is how you confirm that there is no charge available in the entire systems or cables or in the body earth conditions, and then only you are allowed it to work upon it. Now these are the safety devices. Emergency park disconnect. So this is the emergency pack which is normally available on such vehicles, and that has to be turned around so that discharge is properly taken care. Once the de-energized states is established and then there are no faults in the systems, there shall be no torquing procedure by the person who is operating on the high voltage systems, no electrical energy available in the entire systems, and no voltage on the capacitors, no voltage on the HV cables is ensured. So HV battery is isolated from the rest of the HV systems. So you have to isolate the battery first, and then the cables which has to be connected to the motors. Then HV battery is still, it is charge condition. So even in any accident, even in this short circuit, or even in the burning cases, one has to be very, very properly aware when to handle, what to do and what not to do. So this is very important message which I would like to personally give it to all of you, and then we will proceed further. Now restoring the HV systems, how to work on that, so that the work on the body vehicle or maybe a connection level vehicle which can be taken forward. Before restoring the system, make it sure that no one is working on the vehicle systems anywhere. So that is a protected area where other people are not allowed it to work in. No one is in danger zone. in initial level, we talked about the dedicated zone for such type of vehicles. So people in dedicated zone will not enter. You may have to have the bunding tapes, which you can make the protection, and other people in and around the vehicle, they are away from that bunting tape, so that you are keeping the safe distance. All the tools are back in the original place. Metal tools are not in the danger zone. Do not leave loose wires or conductors. All HV connectors are closed, and then release the safety measures. So by the sequencing process and having the mindset fully prepared, we have to work on the systems to diagnose, to repair, or to find out the faults and work on those vehicles when such requirements comes up. So using the cord and the plug connections equipments, what are the instructions about it? Visual inspections of the cord and the plug should be performed before the starting of the work. Then defective or damaged items must be removed immediately from the usage and may not be used until the repairs and tests necessary to render the equipment safe have been made. So extension cords must be rated for their intended use. Don't take any other cables which are not desirable. Extension cords used with the grounding equipments must be certain grounding conductor. So you have to use a proper cables for such matters. The adapter that interrupt the continuity of the equipment and grounding connections may not be used. Equipments should be handled in a manner that will not cause the damages to the cord and the plug. The cords are not to be used in the raising or lowering the equipments and should not be fastened with the staples or the hungs in the fashion that could damage the other jackets or the installations. And cords should be routed so that they do not present a trap hazard in the aisles areas and the workplace areas. So one has to be follow these guidelines which have been given, how to connect the or how to inspect the cords and the plugs for the connections of the equipments. Similarly, how to react in case of the electrical accident physically happened. So danger situation assistance, how that one person can involve still frozen or circuit. Is that person is involved in the still frozen or in the circuit part of it? That means he is already into contact of the accidental conditions. Person sitting inside the vehicle, probably he is in the frozen zone that point of time when the accident took place. And can that current source be deactivated? So important messages here is, do not endanger yourself, deactivate the current source first. If necessary, use the rescue rods, that is a protective rods of wooden or maybe at the end of it where you can disconnect the cables by that rod and rescue the persons in the frozen on circuit areas. You are generally aware that in electrical circuits you cannot start and pulling the persons from the electrical connected areas. So you need to take out the connections which are passing the current to your body. So first, don't touch to the person, but try to get some rods and try to remove that electrical connections where is it got attached to. In DC circuits, you are always attracted towards this. AC circuits always try to throw you out. So these differences we must learn about it. Do reanimation if needed, then emergency calls to the right people, use the first aid kits to treat the wounds, and then go with the people how firefighting can be done. Call fire departments, inform the operators of the system. Just do not call them. You tell them that this is an electrical fire which I have noticed, so that they can bring those firefighting extinguishers in and around which are available with them. So in fire circuits of electrical hazards, you are well aware that water is not going to help. So fire tender coming over there is not going to help you. So all those understandings we need to provide them. Of course, they carry the fire extinguishers along with them. That is another considerations which they anticipate and work on all the circumstances over there. So inform the operator of the systems, deactivate the current sources, close the fire damper of the ventilation systems, use the suitable fire extinguishers, consider the application of existing extinguishers agents like water, CO2 extinguishers only if the voltage is about 1000 voltage with the distance of at least 3 meters. Safe distance for the working is 3 meters. keep enough distance to hazard while they rescuing, firefighting, and by sounding out the situation. So, as a professor, I would request all of you to make aware of the people who are working on all those type of preparatory work and the work upon these scenarios should be fully aware. Even in college, these practices need to incorporate. That's what I feel. I leave it to you. Now, I would give you the overview how the CMVR and ARI activities which have been engaged to make sure that the vehicles which have been offered in the public systems, they have been made safe. So you can see over these different requirements over there. One is your EV requirements, and there are automotive Indian standards called as a 38, 39, 40, 41, 49. These standards are available on ARI website. Anybody who is looking for this can access to those standards without any implications, and he can read through the standards requirements so that one can be fully aware what is required for EVs. Similarly, HEVs requires AIS 102 and Part 1 and Part 2. Retrofitment is another area in Indian circumstances which is very popularly used by our people because of the economic conditions. So retrofitment means you take out your power plant, you replace with the electrical systems, and people make the old vehicles which are reusable by electrical systems. And many people are engaged in this type of activities. So AIS 123 Part 1, 2, and 3 is giving you guidance about it. How do you do the retrofitment? How do you get the requirement verified by ARI, and how ARI can help you in this case to go with this kind of a systems objective which you are looking at it. There is another area which is coming up. The today's environment, you have seen so many petrol pumps available in and around, but where are these electrical charging stations? So when electrical charging stations for those EVs is definitely required over every corner and locations. So these standards have been prepared. What is that required in charging stations? So AIS 138 is also available, and fortunately ARI is ready to offer you technology for such making those chargers as well. So we are happy to say that if any startups are interested, they can come to ARI, they can support it by giving the guidance and also the standards, and they will be well aware how that charging station installation can be done about it. So small series vehicles is defined in the AIS 131. Then low speed two-wheelers, that is typically called as a peak speed, which is controlled less than 24 or 25, I would say. If anything about 24 is okay, but if it is exceeding 25, this type of vehicle is not categorized as a low speed vehicle. So there is another considerations for it. 250 watt system which has been defined in your car two-wheeler. If it is pertaining to having that kind of a motor, probably you can define as a two-wheeler with a low speed application. Similarly, e-rickshaws has got a GSR 709 or 2590 for those electrical vehicles. And battery systems are defined in AIS 48. So if you look at it, the vehicle level safeties has been considered. Then the retrofitment as a part of the another operations has been considered. The charging station, which requires definitely a standards for all that, has been defined. Similarly, the batteries or the controllers or the BMS, which you have heard about these types, is also part of the requirement which has to undergo for a rigorous testing and validation. By that way, only ARI can certify, yes, your standards have been met and you are entitled to manufacture your products. So they communicate to RTOs, and that's how RTO accepts your vehicle. This is how the entire system of ARI looks forward, and I'm happy to say that the ARI does a noble work over here by which people can be knowledgeable. They are well aware about these advanced requirements. They are prepared by themselves and kept themselves at a high level of the technological understanding so that they can prepare the standards to follow by the other Indian people. Of course, as I rightly pointed out, yes, there are American standards or US standards or the people from European standards who are working on the advanced systems. They are already making those standards which suitably converted into India, and that's how it is being taken forward for that matter. But in ARI, we do one more activity to represent on all such forums, including emission norms, including the standards for electrical vehicles, including the future part of the development which is happening on autonomous vehicles. So ARI staff works on all such matters and they feel proud about their working involvements, and that's how it looks like. Now I'm just giving you some comparable standards, and from European reference standards, what are the Indian standards derived for, and under the Indian conditions, what the standards refer is complete requirement of this different electrical systems. I will not read it out because it is very clearly legible to all of you. I'm sure you can very well look at it there. The last one, AS49 is the last standard, which is considered as a CMVR type approval. So if somebody is submitting his vehicle, he has to undergo what are the formats to be used, what are the information to be shared with ARI, all that is being specified here. But safety requirements in totality has been projected properly, and test systems has been defined, how it has to be tested, so that the transparency level has been considered and people can really prepare by themselves and then submit their products for the test requirements. Is it clear to all of you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just coming to the last couple of slides only. I thought of taking a small breathing break, but
No,
now I
sir.
can go ahead with.
Oh,
The most common lithium ion, today's scenario, everybody is very happy to say that yes, India has got a lithium ion. In Rajasthan, we found some ores. In Karnataka, we find some lithium ion ores, and we are working on it. But what it is happening to those evaluation of those lithium ions? If you look at the nickel, manganese, cobalt, lithium ion, which is treated as a very unsafe and very expensive also. The lithium ion phosphate based batteries, which are considered as a safe, but see, reasonably safe, I would say. And they are also reasonably at operating cost. Cost wise, they are also not too high for such matters. Then nickel, cobalt, aluminum is again unsafe and reasonably cost wise, they are okay. Lithium, uh, titanium, titanate oxide batteries, which are safe but very, very highly expensive. And I had given a couple of values for the energy storage and the charging cycles and charge discharge conditions. So that table you can make it out, which are better for part for it. So if you look at the different batteries, this NCA nickel cobalt aluminum batteries, although it is giving you high level of the energy level, or LTO is also giving you life cycle time wise, they are much more chargeable and dischargeable. So they have been having some specific parameters which are acceptable, which are not acceptable. But if you look at the lead acid batteries, they are very, very low in the life cycle part of it. Their charging discharging times are very that way it is C rates are very low, and even supercapacitors which are used in the aerospace industry, they had got an enormous life. The cycle wise charging cycle, discharging discharges cycle life is quite reasonably high level, so that without even attending from any ground locations on the space centers, they can work effectively. And that's how supercapacitors development has been treated as a priority part of it, which can be also slowly come into the picture of automobile vehicles on the ground. And probably people are looking at it to develop for those autonomous trains that can be taken forward. This is a clue which I am trying to share with you. Of course, thinking people or the researcher people, they are working on it, and there are many supercapacitors in being parallelly developed by them, which are likely to come in the market. As you are rightly aware about it, the Tesla, which use the high voltage lithium ion batteries, they use with the poly type of phosphates, lithium polymer batteries, and which are reasonably safe as well as reasonably cheap. But that technology is not available with the others. So people are struggling on it because being the patents has been given to those countries in well in advance, and that's how people focus on those areas where the niche technologies can be used for that matter. This is for the referencing purpose, not part of the understanding, but mainly this is useful when you select the batteries as a designer part of it. Now I'm going to give you some overview how that charger looks like and what are the systems required to test for the chargers as well. So low voltage systems less than 100 volts, is considered as a low voltage system, even though 72 is considered as a high voltage system. But generally, the standards which defines about 100 volts and above 100 volts. So I can give you the AC and DC considerations and what sorts of pictures generally connectors have been provided. Like you typically see the plug pins for electrical systems, similar type of plug pins have been prepared over here. There are certain standards which have been defined for it. Bharat standard AC 001 or DC 001 for 48 volts and anything above 72 volt is being defined here. And this type of charging systems are generally used for those vehicles for charging on the vehicle level or maybe charging on the onboard charging on the systems where they are using the electrical vehicles. Now, if I consider high voltage systems, anything goes above 100 volts is considered for that matter. But power use for such high voltage systems is between 11 kV to 100 kV or anything above that also. So there are again AC types of systems are there or DC type of systems are there, but CCC type of chargers which have been shown here with a symbolic part of connections. Similarly, CHAdeMO systems are there. So different countries, when they invent these type of things, they started using these considerations. And you are well aware about it that the Android phones or iPhones or the new type of C type of connection for the chargers, they have been differently denominated, but they are made unique so that people follow into that category only. They don't use it something grossly different, but they can always overcome the problems which they find it in the charging systems. But mobile charging or vehicle charging, the standards have been prepared, and based on that only, any manufacturer has to adopt those standards, and accordingly, he has to put the charging system over there. Now, this is a symbolic representation for that, and I'm going to give you some illustration. What is that charger testing and validation required? So, very specifically, Bharat standards or IC standards or I standards they have to follow when they do the validation out of those systems which you make. The test for protocol verifications, EMI, EMC. EMI, EMC is another area where all the people from institutions and academia should aware about it, that electrical systems generates a lot of magnetic interference, and this interference and compatibility of those equipments having a one effect from your mobile, as you are rightly pointed out that people always talk about, no, you don't put it in your top pocket of the shirt, probably it is threatening to your heart. Or maybe when people put it into your uh, pocket of the pant, they always say that it is kept away from your body part because it is definitely emitting some signals. It is magnetic fields are getting influence to your body part of it, and the functions of body get affected by that way. Similarly, here also the system to system, like you have 10 ECUs in your vehicles in the new scenario conditions, like ECU is different, TCU is different, the system speed requirement is different, sensors for autonomous driving is different, braking sensors are different. So there are many electronic control systems have been provided in the vehicle. Nearly about 6-7 systems have been placed over there. And in that conditions, what is the consequence from one system to another system, whether it is interfering with other systems, or if any systems are demanding too much of thing or becoming very sensitive about it, again, it is a problematic part of it. So then EMC, EMI chambers are required to evaluate those areas, and we have to make sure that it is not affecting to the other systems. Similarly, environmental conditions or interoperability is also another area where we have to work for. Uh, interoperability is across the vehicles. That is what we have to work for the Bharat Charger Testing charging systems. And then charging systems and communication network is critical to enable the scalability or severity and the safety part of it. That is how security systems has been made foolproof to see that interoperability can be taken care. Similarly, explicit testing for the standards and conformance is necessary to provide authorized verifications and interoperability of any implementation. I'm showing you the EV charger which has been placed there. Then load bank is available as a battery part of it. When you connect, a simulator has to be in place because it directly do not accept the charge from the electrical charging system to the battery, And again, when it goes back, giving the signal to the electric charge system, then there is a communications like CAN communications, which are important and plays a role of controller over there. So these controllers are definitely required to check for interoperability and as well as the communicating standards so that they work together. And these validations of those charger systems is very, very essentially required before they install. So risk and mitigation plans. So high voltage system charging is definitely a consideration of the high risk and how to mitigate that. Cell temperature, you are aware that it is either it's corrected in the series or parallel, and those small cells of certain voltage which generates at very low level, so they have been connected together, and the battery has been made of 72 ampere hour or 36 ampere hour, or sometimes it is 144 ampere hours, or even higher level for the buses and trucks. So this cell temperature predominantly plays a major role. If anything goes wrong in one small cell, that creates a resistance, always create a temperature over around. And that temperature in and around the cells and that areas is try to damage the other cells areas as well. So connections between the cell to cell in series or parallel conditions will have definitely a consequence part of it. And heat burst of the cell can happen if something goes wrong. Probably just imagine the scenario, you are driving your car and as if like somebody comes and from the back end hit you, and you place your battery exactly at the back end where normally luggage space is available, or the area where normally people place the CNG cylinders at the back end. You have seen those cases, like people used to have those LPG gas cylinders and they met with an accident and LPG got burst. So those kind of scenarios are likely to be there. In such cases, when burst happens, the gas wise, yes, LPG gas has a low risk level, CNG gas has a little higher risk level, but batteries which are carrying the high voltage systems, there is a big threat about it. So heat and burst of cell or battery level becomes a very, very severe case of the damage which will happen to the vehicle level as well as the passengers inside and some of the passengers outside as well. So looking at these type of areas, how do I make a vehicle very, very carefully and safe and protective for all such matters is important for that matter. And just to share with you that the crash worthiness part of it is always checked for it for all those new vehicles. So technologically, I would advise you, but technology revelations is important for all of us. Same time, all these compliance which have been made by different OEMs is also necessarily good for that matter. So if we are looking at the old days that I wanted to use 25 years old scooter or 25 years old motorcycle or 25 years old my car, it is not going to help you in the scenario of latest world environment. So we have to work for all such understandings and look forward for the benefits of the technology, which one person can always take it and make it safer for the society. So heat and burst conditions, we have understood it properly. Thermal runaway is another concept, like all these cells which have been placed in lithium ion batteries and they have been placed below your passenger areas or maybe in the areas where the floor level has been placed in case of Tesla and many other vehicles, they have the different similar provisions for those areas to place the batteries. Now what is that thermal runaway? In the charge and discharge conditions, always heat is getting generated. Similarly, when the function happen, you drive your car and you come to an stationary conditions. This heat which remains inside the cell is trying to come out slowly. But in case if any leakage happens to these cells by any change of environmental conditions or over a period of time, if it gets break, the ceiling has got break, or you have the similar experience in old days, those torches which we use in our home purpose, sometimes cells which have not been used, automatically it used to get discharged. All that liquid acid which was placed inside the small dry cells, they used to come out of it. And then the entire torch used to get unuseful for person to use in future. So what it happens that lot of salty situations comes inside, and those conductors which have been placed from negative side to positive side, they can't work in that scenario. Similarly, the thermal runaway means the heat which is absorbed inside the cell, which tries to come out because of the leakage conditions, and suddenly that heat tries to flow out. The other cells also get heated because of that, and it also get affected for those sealing conditions of those small cells. You might have seen the similar cells, what is available for torch or battery. The similar type of cells have been used in these recent batteries which have been used for those automotive vehicles as well. And suddenly that heat start dissipating from the particular cell, which creates a nuisance for the entire battery. So battery sealing also gets broken out, and suddenly that heat goes out of the battery, and which tries to flow like a fire outside the area. So whatever is in contact with the fire will start immediately getting burned into. And that is how thermal runaway. We have to anticipate that. We have to make the protections. Even if you are handling multiple batteries or trying to store it inside your labs, you have to make the safe conditions for those batteries. And that's how the test conditions, how to mitigate that risk of thermal runaway, where these batteries can be kept nearby, how that source of water which should be available for it. So in case of any thermal runaway happens, the momentarily you can dip it into the 1 meter level of the water, and that can take care of your heat dissipation, which is normally a heat dissipation only. That's how it is called as a thermal runaway. Similarly, crash impact, I talked about it, something about it. The grounding of HV currents is more important. So at least after the crash happens, in physical form, we do the crash test, we certify for the crash test, but in EV cases, we have to give certain amount of time to make sure that de-energizing happened. The current which has been flown from the battery and all components is properly taken care, and then only we touch for the impact conditions. Now you imagine the condition on the road. If something happens and this is not the safe supply from any OEMs, what it will happen to you if you are driving these vehicles, or if you are happen to be a passenger in the vehicle. So just imagine for such matters, and I'm trying to give you a thought process over here. Then again, the small point of it, how much time is required for getting it completely discharged. That's how we have to really think about it, and dealing with high voltage systems has to be a very, very sensitive matter which we have to deal with. So make people aware, make people trained, make people fully equipped with, and then only they deal with such kind of activities. That's the last message which I would like to give you over here. I think I have completed my discussion topic. Almost like 80 minutes we are talking. I hope it's something new which you are trying to listen to it for the first time. With this note, I am open for question answers. Madam, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Participants, are there any questions? Sir, can you just give your mail ID so that if the participants are having any queries, so they can contact you, sir?
Yes, my mail ID is nibandhe.cp. Nibandhe, NIBANDHE .cp, C for Chakan, P for Pune, @ARAI India. I will be repeat here in this case, ARAIindia.com.
Sir, I have just put it in the chat box, so can you check it whether it is correct or wrong?
Yeah. Yes, it is correct.
Okay. So if the participants are having any questions, they will contact you, sir. And if the participants are not having any questions, we'll come to the conclusions.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Sir, you're audible.
Good morning, sir. This is Dr. Gaikwad from PVG College.
Yes, sir.
The session was very excellent. You focus on lot of points as an safety aspects and the precautions to be taken while such things has to be handled.